I honestly can't think of any queer representation that I had when I was growing up.
I wasn't necessarily looking because I didn't really identify as LGBTQIA+ at the time. So I could have just missed something, but I also feel like maybe if I had seen someone who was queer, bisexual, or transgender, then maybe I would have found my identity sooner.
Generally, I'd say there wasn't a whole lot. I'd say there was definitely some. Some of it was very good, but also it was still coming off the end of the whole AIDS crisis. And so because of the really awful politics that was around that, there was still sort of this idea that gay or same-sex or otherwise queer relationships were more dirty or more dangerous, which was really not correct or accurate or helpful.
Even like, I even had like gay uncles, and it still wasn't like, no one talked about it. It was like, you know what, we'll talk about it when they get older, even though it was like, this shouldn't have been as big of a deal as they were making it out to be. And then like, even in media, like I didn't see anyone. Like, I remember the only time I saw like anything regarding LGBT was when I would go to like Blockbuster Video, and they had like the gay section, I guess maybe, but it was like more or less like a few movies just scattered here and around like the store. And that was pretty much it.
What did exist was, I think, very largely stereotypes, and very, yeah, again, you know, maybe like a typical, again, stereotyped typical white gay male couple in which one person is super hyper masculine and one's, you know, hyper effeminate. So again, kind of playing into these heteronormative sort of gender and sexual roles. So it wasn't even like when those representations were there that they were necessarily depicting kind of broader queer relationships and social dynamics.
The amount of queer people who identify as queer, like in like shows or like in the media, whatever, is very small. On top of that, people who are like genderqueer or not cis is very limited as well.
Everyone wants to see themselves in a movie or in a TV show or like in a book or in a webcomic.
There are bisexual women on, like in a lot of TV shows, like Orange is the New Black definitely has them, like every other show definitely has them, except for the fact that they never use the actual word bisexual, and so they're kind of just like ambiguously gay or like ambiguously queer, and so in that sense I don't necessarily feel represented. And there's also a total shortage of like Black queer women, especially on camera, and so that really stresses me out because it's usually just like limited to like maybe even like a person like Laverne Cox, who's wonderful, but also it's like frustrating because I want to see more of myself like in the media besides Orange is the New Black.
I think representation of people with fluid or differing or not so like exact sexualities is really important, because people like that and people like me who like kind of float around and aren't really sure sometimes, like we still need to feel validated and represented and real, right?
They're not, unless the school needs to do a diversity initiative.
I think there's a lot of push to try and get more representation out there, but as someone who gets the listservs and stuff, it's obvious to me, but if I didn't get the listservs, I wouldn't really know at all what's going on.
I think like on campus, I've like basically sought out a lot of LGBTQA+ people. So I'm probably like in my head, they're overrepresented in contrast with probably other people's experiences.
And I'm also in like a major that focuses on LGBT people, but I'm also in another major where we're not mentioned ever.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't even realize how many like queer folk are actually like sitting next to them on a daily basis.
And I've also taken like science classes that want to that really impose like this sort of like really cis-normative way of like being human. So in some ways, like in like community things, like we are represented fairly well, especially for the time. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's still a lot of areas in which that is definitely not the case.
When we are talking about like queer identities, a lot of people who don't understand it's still something very alien or other to them, or it's still like funny.
I think if I had seen some better LGBTQ plus representation in my younger years, I would have spent a lot less time confused about my identity and feeling bad about who I was.
Just seeing somebody live a normal life and just not be straight, that's it.
I would have been able to come out and express myself in a way that was beneficial for me at a much earlier age, instead of being traumatized like I had been.
I go to college, I work, I do everything that a straight person would do. It's just who I lay next to at night is different, so.
Oh man, everything would have been easier if I had had more role models earlier. If I had realized that it wasn't like a weird, like edgy choice or something like that. I don't know, if I had seen people like me when I was growing up, my whole life would have just been so much easier.